The rain was hitting my windshield pretty hard when I sat in that parking garage at 11:47 p.m., staring at my phone screen showing 23 missed calls. Just 72 hours earlier, Sharon Martinez had looked me straight in the eye and told me I wasn't ready for the CTO position. Now everyone at Vertex Financial was calling me like the data center was on fire. My name's Marcus Chen. I'm 47 years old, and until that conversation with my boss, I thought loyalty and expertise mattered in corporate America. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. I've been at Vertex Financial for 12 years. Before that, I spent 6 years in the Navy as an IT specialist aboard the USS Carl Vinson. When you're responsible for maintaining communication systems on a nuclear aircraft carrier, you learn pretty quick that failure isn't an option. That mindset served me well in corporate IT, maybe too well. When I started at Vertex, our technology infrastructure was held together with duct tape and prayer. My predecessor had left during a messy lawsuit, deleting critical system architecture files on his way out. I spent the first 8 months rebuilding everything from scratch, working until 2 a.m. most nights, mapping out every server dependency and creating detailed disaster recovery procedures. Here's what nobody understood. I didn't just rebuild the systems, I architected them to be bulletproof but complex. Technically documented, but practically impossible to understand without the context in my head. It wasn't sabotage. It was defensive engineering. When you build critical infrastructure after watching your predecessor get screwed, you make damn sure you're irreplaceable. My documentation was comprehensive. 400 pages of technical procedures. But complex systems require understanding why steps exist, not just what they are. It's like a reactor manual in a language you barely speak. The words are there, but the meaning requires years of context. Take our database architecture, on paper straightforward, but requiring 23 different overnight maintenance procedures in a specific sequence with manual verification checkpoints. I'd learned that over years of 2 a.m. troubleshooting, or our vendor relationships. Sure, we had contracts formally documented, but what really mattered was knowing our data center provider's senior engineer would answer his personal cell at 3 a.m. if I called. That I could text our security vendor directly and get critical patches deployed in 2 hours instead of the 48-hour SLA because I'd helped them land other clients. The Navy taught me that the best defensive position is one your enemy can see but can't replicate. My daughter Emma was only 2 when I started, about a year after my wife Michelle died in a car accident. I remember my sister asking why I was always at the office instead of home with my toddler. I thought it would pay off eventually. Work hard, become indispensable, and you'll get recognized. For 12 years, I kept Vertex's entire technology infrastructure running. When trading systems crashed at 3 a.m., I fixed them before markets opened. When ransomware hit, I had backups nobody else knew existed. When regulatory auditors came, I produced comprehensive security protocols that made us look like a Fortune 50 company. Sharon Martinez became CEO about 18 months ago. Sharp woman, about 52, impressive financial operations background. The problem was, she brought her nephew Tyler Beaumont. Fresh Harvard MBA, 28 years old. Great at PowerPoint presentations about digital transformation. Never actually migrated a system to the cloud, but he had all the buzzwords memorized. The promotion meeting happened on a Tuesday at 4 p.m. I'd prepared a comprehensive presentation showing how I'd reduced system downtime by 87% over the past 3 years, cut IT costs by $2.3 million through strategic vendor negotiations, and personally architected the infrastructure that supported our expansion into cryptocurrency trading, a business line that now generated 40% of our revenue. Sharon flipped through my presentation for maybe 7 minutes before setting it aside. "Marcus, I appreciate everything you've done," she said, finally looking up from her phone. But I've been thinking about the direction of this department. We need fresh perspectives, innovative thinking. Tyler will be taking over as Chief Technology Officer next month. I kept my expression neutral, the way they taught us in the Navy when an admiral delivers bad news. I see. And where does that leave me? You'll continue as Senior Infrastructure Manager. Tyler will need someone experienced to help him understand our systems and get up to speed on operations. Translation. I'd do all the actual work while her nephew got the title, the executive salary, and the stock options. I'd train my replacement, who had no idea how anything actually worked. I understand, I said quietly. Thank you for the feedback. Great. I'm glad we're on the same page. Tyler starts Monday, so maybe you can prepare some orientation materials over the weekend. That's when something clicked for me. I'd been working weekends for 12 years. I'd missed Emma's dance recitals, parent-teacher conferences, birthday parties. I'd given this company everything, including the years I should have spent being a present father. And now they wanted me to spend my weekend preparing to train my replacement. I stood up, shook Sharon's hand, and walked out. But instead of going back to my desk, I walked straight to the parking garage and sat in my car for 45 minutes. That's where I made the decision that changed everything. I wasn't going to quit in anger. I wasn't going to storm out or delete anything or commit any kind of sabotage. I was going to do something much more effective. I was going to follow my job description exactly as written. My official job description was pretty basic. Manage daily IT operations for assigned infrastructure systems. Maintain vendor relationships within approved budget parameters. Coordinate with department heads on routine technology requests. Provide technical support during business hours. Standard corporate language that didn't come close to describing what I actually did every day. I arrived at 6 a.m. to check overnight system logs. I monitored trading systems in real time and made split-second decisions to prevent cascading failures. I answered emergency calls at 2 a.m. I rebuilt critical systems on weekends. I trained every new IT hire personally because our documentation was too complex for anyone else to teach effectively. But my job description said business hours, technical support. So that's what they were going to get. I drove home that Tuesday evening and did something I hadn't done in years. I turned off my work phone at 5:30 p.m. and put it in my desk drawer. Emma was shocked when I walked in the door at 6:15 p.m. instead of 9 or 10. "Dad? You're home for dinner," she said, looking up from her homework with genuine surprise. "Decided my time was more valuable than I thought," I told her. "Want to tell me about your day?" Her face lit up like Christmas morning. Wednesday morning, I arrived at exactly 9 a.m. No early morning system checks. No getting ahead of potential problems. No reviewing overnight transaction logs. I answered emails addressed directly to me and forwarded everything else to the appropriate departments. By 11 a.m., people were starting to notice. Kevin from the trading desk stopped by my cubicle looking confused. "Marcus, the overnight reconciliation report is showing discrepancies. Can you take a look?" "That's actually a finance department issue, Kevin." "Those discrepancies are in the settlement processing system, which falls under their operational control. I'd recommend opening a ticket with their team, but you always catch these things before we even notice them. I've been advised to focus more on my core infrastructure responsibilities," I said with a professional smile. Within 48 hours, the cracks weren't just showing. They were spreading like fractures in ice. The cryptocurrency trading platform ran slower each day because nobody knew about the overnight database optimization I performed manually. Client portal errors multiplied. Cross-department coordination collapsed because I wasn't there bridging communication gaps that nobody else knew existed. I watched it unfold like a controlled demolition. Every system I'd built to be robust but complex. Every procedure I documented but required deep understanding to execute. Every vendor relationship that ran through me personally. It all started breaking down the moment I withdrew my invisible competence. Thursday morning at 8:47 a.m., I walked into chaos. Sarah from operations was practically running down the hallway, her normally perfect composure shattered. "Marcus, thank God you're here. The client reporting system crashed at 6 a.m. and nobody can pull quarterly statements. We have 200 high-net-worth clients expecting their reports by noon." I pulled up the system logs calmly, the familiar green text scrolling across my screen like I was reading sheet music. The reporting system needs a specialized database maintenance procedure that runs every Thursday morning at 5 a.m. It to me, it rebuilds indexes, purges temporary tables, and optimizes query execution paths. Without that maintenance, the system gets bottlenecked with fragmented data and times out under load. Sarah's eyes were desperate, the kind of desperation that comes from having your biggest clients screaming into voicemail. "Can you run that maintenance now?" I checked my calendar, taking my time, letting the silence stretch. I have a scheduled infrastructure review meeting at 9:30. The database maintenance procedure is documented in the IT Operations Manual, Section 14, subsection 7.2. Any of the database administrators can execute it with proper authorization. But that documentation is like 40 pages of technical instructions. It'll take hours to figure out what all those commands actually do. "It's quite straightforward if you follow the procedures," I said encouragingly. "The manual includes step-by-step instructions, expected output at each stage, and rollback procedures if something goes wrong." "Marcus," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "we have clients calling. Important clients. The Caldwell Family Trust manages $300 million with us. They're threatening to move everything to Morgan Stanley if they don't get their quarterly report by 2 p.m. We're talking about our 3 largest accounts being at risk." "I understand the urgency," I replied, maintaining that same calm tone that probably made me sound like a sociopath. However, with the department restructuring coming up and Tyler taking over as CTO, I thought it was important to follow proper protocols instead of being the single point of failure for every technical issue. This is exactly the kind of situation where having properly trained staff and clear procedures should allow the team to handle problems independently. The look on her face told me everything. She'd never actually thought about what I did every day. None of them had. They just knew that systems worked, problems got solved, and Marcus handled it. By noon, the client reporting crisis had escalated to CEO level. Sharon called an emergency meeting. When I walked in at 12:15, Tyler was already there, looking overwhelmed, along with Sharon, our CFO David Chen, and 3 senior vice presidents. "Marcus," Sharon said with forced calm, "we need to resolve this reporting system issue immediately. Can you explain what's happening?" I walked them through the technical details. The reporting system requires routine database maintenance that prevents performance degradation. That maintenance didn't run this morning because I normally execute it personally at 5 a.m. before arriving at the office. Since I'm now working standard business hours, the maintenance didn't occur. "Why isn't this automated?" Tyler asked. "It is automated," I replied. "But the automation relies on specific system permissions and execution contexts that require manual verification. The procedure was designed to be performed by someone who understands the database architecture intimately." "Can you run it now?" David asked. "The procedure takes approximately 90 minutes to execute safely. However, I have my regular infrastructure maintenance window scheduled for this afternoon. Running an unscheduled database procedure outside established maintenance windows violates our change control protocols." The room went completely silent. "Marcus," Sharon said carefully, "are you saying you won't help us?" "Not at all. I'm saying that if we want to maintain proper IT governance, which was emphasized in last quarter's compliance audit, then we need to schedule this work appropriately. Alternatively, Tyler could authorize an emergency change control exception, since he'll be taking over IT leadership. All eyes turned to Tyler, who looked like a deer in headlights. I don't know enough about the system architecture yet to authorize that kind of exception. What if something goes wrong? Then we'd have an even bigger problem, I agreed, which is why these decisions require deep technical expertise. Sharon's face was getting red. How long to schedule this properly? We'd need to convene the Change Advisory Board, which meets Friday, so we could potentially execute the maintenance next Thursday. That's a week away. We'll lose clients. I maintained my calm, professional demeanor. I understand the business impact. These are the trade-offs that technology leadership has to make every day. David leaned forward. Marcus, in the past, how would you have handled this? In the past, I would have stayed late last night, noticed the maintenance job failed, and run the procedure manually before going home. Then I would have been in at 6 a.m. this morning to verify everything was running smoothly. By the time any of you arrived, the problem would have been resolved and you'd never have known there was an issue. So why didn't you do that this time? Sharon asked, her voice tight. Because I was advised to focus on my core responsibilities and prepare for Tyler's transition. Late-night system monitoring isn't in my official job description. I'm just trying to work within my defined role. The implications hung in the air like smoke. For 12 years, I'd been preventing disasters they didn't even know were possible. What would it take, Sharon asked slowly, for you to resolve this crisis the way you always have? I looked around the room at faces that had relied on my expertise for years without acknowledging it. Perhaps we should have a conversation about what my role actually is versus what my job description says. Tyler spoke up, his voice shaky. Marcus, I thought I was coming in to modernize technology strategy, not take over your position. Strategy without execution is just PowerPoint slides, I said. Do you know how many times our trading system almost failed catastrophically this year? 37 times. I prevented failures that would have cost $500,000 to $5 million each. Total risk managed, $47 million. None of that appears in any report because successful disaster prevention is invisible. The room was silent. Before anyone could respond, the conference room door burst open. Jessica from compliance rushed in, tablet in hand, face pale. We just got an emergency notification from the SEC. They're conducting a surprise audit of our trading systems and client data security. She paused, catching her breath. This isn't routine. They're sending a full forensic team, 6 investigators. They'll be here in 2 hours, and they want to review our entire technical infrastructure documentation, disaster recovery procedures, security protocols, and they specifically want to interview the person responsible for our cryptocurrency trading platform architecture. The silence in that room was surgical. You could hear the HVAC system humming, someone's phone vibrating against the conference table, the distant sound of traders on the floor below, completely unaware that their company was about to be gutted. Sharon's face went from red to white in about 3 seconds flat. What triggered this? Jessica looked at her tablet, hands shaking slightly. Suspicious trading patterns in our cryptocurrency division. Patterns that suggest either technical security failures or potential market manipulation. They've flagged approximately $47 million in transactions over the past 6 months that don't align with normal client behavior profiles. That was my architecture. My security protocols, my trading infrastructure that I'd spent 3 years building from scratch because nobody else in the company understood blockchain technology well enough to make it compliant with financial regulations. The same infrastructure that now generated 40% of our revenue and apparently was about to be examined under a federal microscope. David, our CFO, went completely pale. If they find security failures, we're looking at trading suspension, If they even suspect market manipulation, we're looking at criminal investigations. Who's our primary technical contact for the cryptocurrency platform? One of the VPs asked, even though everyone in that room suddenly knew the answer. Every face in the room turned to look at me. I checked my watch slowly, deliberately. 12:18 p.m. I have that infrastructure review at Wang's Hall. Then I'm scheduled to leave at 5 on for my daughter's drama performance. Marcus, Sharon said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is a federal investigation. I'm aware. The SEC team will need access to our technical documentation, which is comprehensive. All our cryptocurrency platform architecture, security protocols, and trading system designs are documented in the Technical Infrastructure Repository, volumes 8 through 14. Any competent database architect should be able to walk them through it. Can you do it? She asked. And for the first time since I'd known Sharon Martinez, I heard fear in her voice. I could, I said, but I'm curious. Will Tyler be joining that conversation as our incoming CTO? This seems like valuable experience for him. Tyler looked like he was going to throw up. Thursday afternoon at 2:47 p.m. I sat in my car and watched my phone light up with call after call. Sharon, David, Tyler, the COO, even board members. 23 missed calls in 15 minutes. The SEC audit was a full forensic examination triggered by suspicious trading patterns in our cryptocurrency division. The division I'd personally built the infrastructure for. The division that generated 40% of our revenue. Without me there to walk them through our systems, they were drowning. Tyler knew buzzwords but couldn't explain how our encryption actually worked. The IT team could follow instructions but couldn't articulate the why behind technical decisions. Sharon understood business but couldn't speak the technical language SEC investigators required. I turned off my phone and drove to Emma's school. She had a drama club performance at 4 p.m. Not this time would I miss it. Watching my daughter perform as Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing, I realized something profound. For 12 years, I'd been optimizing for Vertex's success at the expense of everything else. I'd built systems they didn't understand, prevented disasters they didn't know were coming, and made myself so valuable that they'd become completely dependent, without ever acknowledging that dependency. The best part? I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd simply stopped volunteering my expertise beyond my official responsibilities. Turns out that was enough. Friday morning at 8:47 a.m. I walked into Vertex to find Sharon waiting in the lobby, personally. Something I'd never seen her do for anyone below sea level. Marcus, can we talk? Her voice had none of Tuesday's authority. Just exhaustion, desperation, and something that looked like actual fear. Her normally immaculate appearance was disheveled. Wrinkled blouse, hair pulled back hastily, the kind of look that comes from spending a sleepless night contemplating career suicide. We walked to her office in silence. The executive floor felt like a funeral home. When she opened her door, I saw David, Tyler, and board chairman Robert Patterson were already waiting. On the conference table were 2 documents that told me everything I needed to know. The first was labeled SEC Compliance Audit, Preliminary Findings and Regulatory Risks. The second made my blood run cold. Draft Severance Package and Separation Agreement, Sharon Martinez, CEO. They were preparing to sacrifice her. And the agreement sitting there, half-reviewed with legal sticky notes flagged throughout, told me this wasn't a just-in-case scenario. This was happening unless something changed dramatically in the next 72 hours. Robert spoke first, and his voice had that careful tone lawyers use when they're trying not to create additional liability. Marcus, I'm the board chairman. I want to be completely transparent about where we are. The SEC investigators spent 6 hours yesterday trying to understand our technical infrastructure. They interviewed Tyler for 90 minutes. They interviewed our entire IT team for another 3 hours. They reviewed every piece of documentation we could provide. He paused, choosing his words carefully. They kept asking for one person, the person who actually built our systems. They said, and I'm quoting their lead investigator directly, "Whoever architected this infrastructure clearly understands both technology and regulatory requirements at an exceptional level. Their knowledge is evident in every system design document we've reviewed. They are notably absent from this conversation, and we need to understand why." "That would be me," I said simply, not sitting down yet. Sharon's hands were actually shaking as she pulled out her notes. "Marcus, they're threatening to halt our trading operations pending further investigation. Not just cryptocurrency, all trading operations. They said our current technical leadership," she gestured vaguely toward Tyler, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, "cannot adequately explain critical security controls or demonstrate sufficient understanding of our infrastructure to satisfy their regulatory concerns." She took a breath, and I saw her eyes were red. They asked point blank if we've experienced a recent loss of key personnel in technology management, if there's been any change in technical leadership that would explain why nobody present could answer basic questions about systems architecture, security implementation, or disaster recovery protocols. I stayed silent, letting the full weight of that sink in. They were being investigated because I wasn't there. Because I'd followed my job description. Because they'd decided fresh perspectives mattered more than expertise. I stayed silent, letting that sink in. Robert continued, his voice grim. The SEC investigator was explicit. He said either we produce the person responsible for our technical infrastructure immediately, or they'll assume we have a governance problem and expand the investigation to include potential executive malfeasance. Personal liability, Marcus. For all of us. David pulled out his notes. "I went through our systems yesterday. I found 127 separate processes with your name as the sole point of contact. Our entire operation runs through you, and we didn't even know it. Because it was invisible," I said. "Successful disaster prevention always is." "The SEC gave us until Monday," Robert said. "They want to interview the person responsible for our systems architecture. If we can't produce that person, they're recommending operational suspension and personal liability investigations for executive leadership." Sharon looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. "Marcus, I made a catastrophic mistake. I thought credentials mattered more than competence. I was trying to position Tyler for a leadership role without understanding what leadership actually meant in your department. I almost destroyed this company." Tyler spoke up. "Marcus, I spent 12 hours yesterday trying to explain to SEC investigators how our data encryption works. I couldn't do it. I understand concepts theoretically, but I don't know our actual implementation. You built something I'm not qualified to maintain, let alone lead." Robert slid a document across the table. "We're offering Chief Technology Officer with full authority over technology operations, executive team seat, and compensation reflecting your actual value to this organization." I reviewed it carefully. 60% salary increase, stock options, retention bonus that made clear they understood I could walk away and watch them collapse. Tyler would report to me as VP of Technology Strategy. 3 conditions, I said. Robert leaned forward. "Name them." "First, full authority to restructure IT. I need budget for 3 senior engineers and proper training programs. Approved?" "Second, Tyler genuinely learns this business. If he's willing to work, I'll teach him. But if this is resume padding, I'm not interested." Tyler met my eyes. "I'm willing. Yesterday humbled me completely. If you'll teach me, I'll put in the work." "Third," I said, looking at Sharon, I want formal acknowledgement to the board about what happened here. Not spin. Truth, that you promoted someone unqualified over someone essential, and it nearly destroyed this company in 72 hours. The room went silent. Sharon took a breath. You're right. I'll make that statement Monday morning, before the SEC interview. Then we have a deal, I said. The SEC compliance interview Monday at 10 a.m. was a masterclass. I walked 3 investigators through our systems with the confident detail that only comes from building everything yourself. They asked technical questions that would have stumped most CTOs. I answered without notes. One investigator, Patel, smiled as I finished. This is the most impressive mid-market infrastructure I've seen in 15 years. Who was your consulting firm? No consultants. I built it internally over the past decade. He made a note. Mr. Chen, I'm recommending a clean audit report. I'm also suggesting our training division use your security protocols as a case study for best practices. That Monday afternoon, Sharon made good on her promise. In front of the entire executive team and board, she gave the most uncomfortable speech I'd ever witnessed. I promoted someone unqualified over someone essential because I valued credentials over competence and family connection over merits. In 72 hours, that decision nearly resulted in regulatory shutdown and personal liability for executive leadership. I failed as a leader, and I'm grateful Marcus Chen is professional enough to stay and rebuild what I almost destroyed. The room was dead silent. Over the next 6 months, I restructured the department from a one-man operation into a functioning team. I hired Sarah Mendez, a brilliant systems architect who'd been stuck in a junior role at a competitor because she didn't have a computer science degree. Just 10 years of experience building trading infrastructure. I brought in James Wu, a security specialist with 20 years of experience who'd been passed over for promotions because he was quiet and didn't play corporate politics. And I hired Rebecca Torres, a 24-year-old prodigy who'd taught herself programming at 14 and understood cloud architecture better than most CTOs twice her age. Together, we documented every critical system, created training programs that actually made sense, and built the kind of redundancy that meant knowledge wasn't trapped in one person's head. We set up rotating on-call schedules so nobody had to sacrifice their entire life for system uptime. We established clear escalation procedures so routine issues didn't require executive intervention. Tyler shadowed me for 8 weeks. Arriving early, staying late, asking smart questions, taking detailed notes. He sat in on vendor negotiations and learned that relationships mattered more than contract terms. He attended technical architecture reviews and gradually understood why certain design decisions had been made years ago. Most importantly, he started admitting what he didn't know instead of pretending. The transformation wasn't instant. He struggled at first, especially when technical problems required split-second decisions based on years of pattern recognition. But the kid had genuine talent for strategic thinking. He couldn't architect a database, but he could see market trends and translate them into technology opportunities. 6 months into his role, Tyler came to my office with a 40-page proposal for blockchain integration into our existing trading platform. A strategy that would open entirely new revenue streams and put us ahead of competitors. It was actually good work. Sophisticated market analysis, clear business case, realistic timelines. But the technical implementation section was thin. We spent 3 weeks refining it together. I helped him understand the infrastructure requirements, security implications, regulatory compliance issues. He taught me about emerging market opportunities I'd been too deep in the weeds to notice. When we finally presented it to the board, it was genuinely collaborative work. His vision, my execution capabilities, combined into something neither of us could have built alone. The proposal was approved unanimously and eventually became one of our most profitable business lines. By month 6, I was home by 6:30 p.m. most nights, present for every one of Emma's drama performances. My team functioned independently. They'd text me occasionally with questions, but rarely needed emergency interventions. Our systems ran smoothly. Clients were happy. Regulatory audits became routine instead of terrifying. And most importantly, I'd stopped being the single point of failure that kept me trapped in a cycle of 24/7 availability. One evening, Emma asked about work while doing college applications. That crisis you had back in spring, when you started coming home for dinner every night. What actually happened? I realized I'd been making myself too valuable while letting other people take credit. When I stopped doing that, they finally noticed what I'd been contributing all along. Is that why you seem happier now? Same company, different role. Now I have authority and recognition to do what I was always doing, just more efficiently and with better support. She smiled. Good, because I like having my dad around. If you've ever felt invisible at work despite doing excellent work, remember this. The best response to being undervalued isn't sabotage or revenge. It's strategic withdrawal. Follow your job description exactly and let reality demonstrate your worth. Sometimes the person they thought they could replace is actually irreplaceable. And when they finally see what you're capable of, make sure the recognition comes with the authority, compensation, and respect you've earned. Your expertise is valuable. Your time is valuable. Stop volunteering either to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it,